when the war finished, he was actually urged to go into politics, and he was asked to join the parliament of one of the German states. But I don't know whether he knew about a Chinese proverb, which goes a bit like that. If you plan for 1 year, you grow wheat. If you plan for 20 years, you grow trees. And if you plan for 200 years, you start to educate. Because he was now putting all his effort into creating an education that focused on providing the world human beings that are ready to contribute to the world instead of exploiting it or destroying it in that case. Human beings that are ready for social consciousness, human beings that are creative. And so in 1919, just 1 year after the World War had finished, Steiner Education began in the German city called Stuttgart. And you can see that he really had the intention to create an education that provides a pathway for the future. When we look at most of the conventional curriculums that are around, then we're looking at a set of knowledge and skills which the students must get, which the students must acquire within a certain amount of years. And if they don't get it, well, then they fail. You need to learn this because later on in life, you will need this. And often there's a complete disregard what the students actually need in the here and now, to the point where sometimes teachers said, I know this is boring, but later on you will need that. Well, children always live in the now. They're not so concerned about what happens later. And so the Steiner curriculum is there for students and to help them in their development. It's a bit like a midwife who works her very best to deliver the child. And so Steiner Education helps the children to develop their own capacity, whatever that may be. And the curriculum is with the children at all times to bring out the best and set them up for whatever their destiny may be, with the notion someone who has a fulfilled present life and who is happy and enriched by the education in the given moment, with something that's meaningful in the given moment, they will develop whatever they need later on. So the curriculum is totally based on child development. And in addition, it's always aiming to reach and to develop the whole human being in any present time. So the education looks after the physical, spiritual, academic, artistic, content, and most of the times all this is integrated. They work hand in hand, along with emotional, intellectual, and social development. I'm not certain if you're familiar with Latin, because the Latin word educere means to lead out, hence the word education. And therefore, there's a big difference between teaching and educating. Sometimes I'd like to get rid of the word Steiner teacher altogether, because we need to be educators. Teacher is someone who provides skills and knowledge, but an educator leads the children out into their lives and into their future. With that, we're looking at the art of education, where all this is integrated and woven by a teacher into a cohesive tapestry. Well, that requires quite a bit from Steiner Teacher. We need to teach literacy, numeracy, and all the other academic content. That's a given. In addition, we need to become musicians. We need to be artists for painting, drawing, sculpturing. We need to be able to play with language, to put on little drama plays. And we need to understand human history as a metaphor for human development. One thing came after the other. And most important, we need to be storytellers. Because a story always awakens imagination in the children. And imagination puts the content, what we actually want to bring, into a context. It sort of warms it up. It comes from the heart, because how can I bring a beautiful imagination to the children? And once we've created that context, then the next day we go and explore this content with lively activities. And we leave it there, and then only on the third day, we ask the children, what was all this about? What was the story all about? And what did we all act yesterday? And then it's the children who actually tell the teacher the concept. So you could almost say the children learn by themselves. They find out by themselves with the guidance of a teacher who tells the story and guides the activities. I could talk for the next 3 days about Waldorf education, but we've got a few other things we need to cover today. And I'm handing over to Andrew now, and with a certain question. 1919, Steiner Education was brought to the children 100 years later. And not many things have changed. The concept, the pedagogy has really not changed that much, although it was trialed very successfully. So the question is, and we often ask that question, is this education old-fashioned, or has it relevance for today? And with that, I hand over to Andrew.
Thank you, Wolfgang. It's a great introduction. And I have to say, it's an enormous pleasure to be able to share a few perspectives with you. And to do that, I'm going to just use a little PowerPoint. And so, well, as Wolfgang said, Steiner education began 100 years ago, and it's often a question, are we still relevant? It's a question that's probably added to by the fact that we still use things like chalkboards, blackboards, and particularly in the primary school, we really like things to be done manually. We don't encourage early IT uptake and so on. So sometimes that can be a perception of Steiner education. But having been involved in it now for many years, I've more and more come to the view that, in fact, the 21st century is the time for Steiner education. In fact, as Wolfgang very rightly quoted that lovely Chinese proverb, which I hadn't heard before, but it's so true. He was looking 100 years ahead for the challenges that would face the generations that we are now living through. And if there are many ways of looking at this. I've only got a few minutes, but the one thing that probably says it more than anything else is the fact that when Steiner outlined his initial vision of education, he called it a healing education. Now, by healing education, he didn't mean children are sick. He meant that we need to bring balance to ourselves as human beings. And he brought actually a bigger vision of education that was more than just the transmission of information. So much of education at his time and still today is about passing on information. Steiner was saying if we're going to educate and have schools, we need to educate the whole person. And as human beings, we have a brain which processes information, but we also have an emotional life, we have a will life, an action, And education needs to encompass all of them. And a healing education was to bring all of these into a state of balance. Now, if you look at mainstream education, what's the most significant difference that has happened over about the past decade? The whole impulse in what education is has changed dramatically. It's happened so quickly and so subtly that I think a lot of people haven't realized the impact of it. The most significant word that's used in education today is well-being, the well-being of students. And in fact, every school in Australia now is demanded to have a well-being framework of how they manage and maintain the well-being of their students. Now, this is exactly what Steiner was talking about. It's a change, profound change in what education is. When I went to school, education was just about still the transmission of knowledge and the academic, in a sense, competitive race to get to the top. Any mental health issues, emotional issues were seen as, in a sense, collateral damage. They were like civilian casualties in a war. Whereas now it's seen that schools have a direct responsibility and it's even part of the curriculum. Now, this is absolutely living out Steiner's initial vision of education, of what it is and what it should be. Now, of course, the vision of what that looks like in mainstream schools can be different, but it's just one small example of how Steiner pioneered a whole radical new vision of what education should be. And what I'd like to do tonight is just quickly run you through an overview to just outline the ways in which Steiner education is so relevant. Now, one of the key ways of doing it is exactly what Wolfgang outlined, that our education, our curriculum, our methods are very much, to use a professional term, age appropriate. In other words, we really look at the child and see what stage is the child going through, what is the way in which they learn, and we adapt our methods and our curriculum to their learning needs at that particular stage. So let's just have a look at the stages that we go through, because Steiner education unfolds and manifests a balanced form, a healing education, by working with these natural organic changes in the way that we grow into being adults. We don't just at 3 years old suddenly start being able to do calculus. We actually have to grow gradually, and our brain changes and our emotional life unfolds, and we go through a series of stages as we grow up. And this picture of the developing human being is at the very heart of Steiner education. And probably our most significant way of working with a healing education and a well-being education is to work with these natural stages. So let's just look at these particular stages. What's the child's first impulse of learning about the world is, what do they want to do when they see an adult doing something that's new? They want to do the same thing. They want to imitate. This is our first form of learning. It's like a whole body learning. And our thinking is very concrete, is very physical, and we learn through imitating what we see around us. Now, if I was to put this into a little graphic, if you just forgive me making a kind of diagram, as to sort of really give you some visual representation of these stages. Play is really this very first form of learning that we go through. You see, as we grow up, we also, in a sense, grow down. We start with a very beautiful sense of being part of the world, and then at a certain stage, we separate out from the world. We become a separate self. This is an important part of the early few 8, 9, 10 years of childhood. We separate out. And as we do that, we learn about the world in different ways. And this first way of learning through play is a very significant one, because it needs to be unfolded. The child needs to experience it. And with each stage of learning, if we can let it unfold and really live it out, we harvest certain learnings from it, and we take those with us into adult life. If we shut it down too early, it can actually be, in a sense, a little bit damaged. It can be a little bit undeveloped. But if it's allowed to flourish, it takes a harvest and a kind of treasure almost for later life. And if a child who has a very rich, joyful play life in their early years, right up in those first about 7 years, we think this is an important time, they take with them a gift of a creative will into adult life. And then around 6 or 7, as the child's starting formal learning, our brain changes again, and we start to think a little bit differently. We start to learn in a different way. Picasso put it very delicately. He said, every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist when we grow up. Now, this is something that really resonates profoundly with Steiner education, because we build our teaching methods in the primary school through imagination, as Wolfgang put so beautifully, through stories, through drama, through play, through putting on plays, through drawing, through color. All of these things build the child's imagination. And this is the way the child is starting to learn now, through images. So rather than learning directly as through their body in play, and different again from as we learn in adults where we learn purely abstractly, child learns in primary school through images. So instead of just introducing a letter, for example, when we start the learning the alphabet, we bring it to them through an image of something in the world that they can see, which they can then turn into the abstract form of a letter. For example, here, a tree. We might have a story about a tree, and then out of that, we abstract the elements of the trunk and the branches into forming the letter T. And this goes for all the things that we do. We also have a very rich life for the children in learning crafts, where they're learning to actually make things. And this is an example of the balance that we have, where we really learn the balance head, heart, and hand. We want to give them a curriculum that teaches them how to actually make things in a very warm, rich, but child-friendly, but child-appropriate, but also important particular crafts. And if we were to summarize this next stage of learning in the primary school, we'd say it's this imagination becomes this second tier in learning. And what this does, as Wolfgang mentioned, when the child hears a story, when they paint a picture, what really is engaged in them? Their feelings are engaged. And this is so important because education can then be also learning about, to use the formal psychological term, emotional literacy. They learn to feel. They develop a rich, strong feeling life. And that becomes a gift that they take with them into the high school. Now, around adolescence, we start to change again. And puberty is not just a physical change of being capable of reproduction. It's also a brain change. Our brain starts to think in a more causal way. We start to connect one thing to another. And this is a natural process that happens around the age of 12, 13, 14. Some children a little bit earlier, some a little bit later, but on average around this age. And then we start to think, we could say causally or even critically. We can pull things apart. But at the same time, in Steiner education, we work with this. This is when we start more formal learning, particularly in things like mathematics, but we still bring it an artistic mood and an artistic feeling, always trying to help the child see the connection between the world outside themselves and the world inside. So things like geometry, being able to see how we can think geometrically and we can create geometric forms, like understand what is a hexagon, but also see it in the world outside ourselves. Now, this gives the child a deeper sense of security in the world. There is a certain inner unity between what's inside us and what's out in the world. And if I was to summarize this third stage, we could say that being able to reason and to think causally is a very important part of your high school development. And in Steiner education, these three stages give us gifts that we take into our adult life. If I was to summarize it almost like as a kind of half of a parabola, we could call it these stages of development that run through our schools of play, imagination, and then some intellectual achievement, all leading to the child stepping out into the wider world. Now, if we were to look at the other half of life, what does the child then take with them? Once they go out into the world, their task then is to make a meaningful life. It's to take all of these experiences that they've had as children and in schools and to re-find as an adult that beautiful sense of connection between themselves and the world that we have instinctively as children. Our task as adults is to be able to find that ourselves. As Steiner put it very beautifully, our highest endeavor is to produce young men and women who out of themselves are able to find meaning and direction in their own lives. Now, how does this relate to the 21st century? Well, you may have heard of what they call the 4 C's. These are the 4 capabilities that have been said to really make for success in the 21st century. The world is no longer, in a sense, one of information that you have to learn and you have to carry with you. As Wolfgang said, so much of education has changed. Now it's about capabilities and being able to manage information that is freely available, but having the personal capacities. And the four capabilities that are known as the 4 C's are critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And one of the great mysteries is, how do we develop this? Well, it's become my very firm view that Steiner Education actually lays down the foundations for success in the 21st century. You look at those 3 areas that I just outlined of what a good education gives us: a creative will from our younger years, a rich feeling life from our primary school years, and then what I call big thinking, or being able to reason as in high school. All of these each align with these qualities of the 4 C's. Critical thinking, obviously, but what does feeling life give you? It gives you a sense of being able to communicate, to collaborate with other people. And one of the mysterious things about in modern education is, how do we build creativity? They even try and teach courses in it at university, but my view there is they've started at the wrong end. We are all naturally creative as children, and the secret is to allow that to flourish and to being able to harvest that and taking it with you as an adult. So to answer the question that Wolfgang sent me of how relevant is Steiner education today, I would have to say I think it's more relevant than ever. And we have many things to share with mainstream education that I think will enrich and nourish their view of what education is. And so I would urge you all to consider how you can, in a sense, take up your part in this new form of education that is a real gift to the 21st century.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Absolutely spot on. And thanks for putting this slideshow together. So what is it actually like to be a Steiner teacher? What is it like to be in the classroom? And I'd like to start with Sinead. And I've got a question for her, because at the moment the press is full about teacher burnout. Not that long ago in the ABC here in Melbourne, a report said that 60% of all teachers think about quitting. It's all too much and nothing makes sense. Sinead, are you ready to quit?
No.
You know,
Especially after these 2 inspiring talks.
so what keeps you going as a Steiner teacher?
What keeps me going? Well, I was at work today, so this is all fresh in my mind, what keeps me going. I teach class 1 currently at East Bentley Primary School, and primarily the children keep me going. And I think the children keep me going because they're beautiful, and that's whether or not you're in a mainstream school or a Steiner school. But being able to meet the children at their developmental stage means that you get to step into childhood again, in a sense, and meet them where they are and live in their world with them. And so you get to live creatively with them, bring imaginative stories to them and enrich their lives and bring the world to them through stories. And that's something that I find incredibly inspiring and gives me, so much joy every day. I mean, we've just finished a project, not a project, but a 3-day cycle, a rhythm, where we're hearing a story about a bug turning into a dragonfly. And the children found the story so immersive. It was very dramatic, and they couldn't understand how this bug had turned into this dragonfly. And then yesterday we made the dragonfly out of beeswax, and they were adding so much detail to it. And then today we wrote sentences about the dragonfly. And it was just such an incredible process to see their wonder being transformed, and then them to create something, and then moving towards something more academic like writing, which is specific to my school because I am in a stream school. So we're writing a little bit earlier than you would be. So I think the way that we work as Steiner teachers is such a gift. And I can't rate it highly enough.
Well, I agree with you, Sinead. After 30 years, I was never tired of teaching. And I would have not finished teaching if I hadn't got the call from the seminar to teach teachers. For me, the work with the children was just so enjoyable and so nourishing for me. Now we have moments in the classroom where everything just fits together. We call it the classroom is humming, and the children are engaged and so forth. And I had a colleague who came out of a year 8 lesson on a history lesson on Renaissance, and he was beaming with joy, and he had tears in his eyes, and he said, "Oh, I can't believe how good this is. I'm having such a good time. The children are having such a good time." And then he said, "I don't know why I'm getting paid for this." But there is also another aspect, and this is what happens after the children leave the school and you actually see the results of Steiner education. Well, there are you as a classic example. You had Steiner education through your life, probably starting in kindy and then all the way through. Then you came to the seminar and now you're teaching. But I'm looking, for instance, at my own 2 sons. They had their Steiner education, and sorry for being biased, but I couldn't be more proud about those 2 young men. They're in their 30s now. And their friends, just about all of them, these young adults, you see them, they're standing in their lives firmly. And then the next step is, this happened to me when I was working at Collingwood, ex-students now becoming parents and bringing their children into the Steiner classroom. So it's not only being in the classroom that's just almost a daily gift. Mind you, you work your proverbial backside off. There's no doubt about it. Sometimes I don't know how my marriage survived, because I prepared every night for hours and hours just for the love of the job and for the love of the children. Now, Andrew, you were meant to add a few things as well. But I think, yeah, you got 3 minutes. Tell me, what is for you when you were in the classroom, and you were in there for how many years?
Oh, too long to remember. Oh, at least 20, yeah, 25, 26, 27. Yep.
Tell us a few rewarding moments or...
Oh gosh, where would I start? Well, I think touching on a few of the things you've said, it's as a teacher, it's professionally very exciting and interesting and intellectually challenging and stimulating. I think, well, a couple of things. One was I found teaching little children. I mean, you know, grade 1, grade 2, just a bit like Sinead's saying, that even, you know, in mainstream, there's this view that teaching high school is more interesting, and that, you know, teaching younger children is a bit boring because they're too little, right? But the wonderful thing with our curriculum is that even teaching 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds, you deal with very profound issues, but in a perfectly simple, child-friendly way. Even something simple like when we start letters, we start with the straight line and a curve, for example, simple as that. Now, the straight line and curve was actually mentioned by Kepler, was mentioned by the great astronomers of classical antiquity. Aristotle mentioned it. It goes back in Western philosophy as one of the foundational kind of design principles of the universe. And you're bringing this to 6-year-olds when you're introducing the letters. And you can have these deep conversations with children at a very appropriate age and in a very appropriate way as a result of the many stories that we tell. I think that one of the most uplifting things is I found storytelling, being able to tell a story every day, learning a story, telling it. There's nothing more enchanting than having a group of 25 children looking up at you, eyes wide open, listening as each word comes out about the story. And I found it emotionally incredibly developing to go through all those different activities that we do as class teachers. And I found that the most nourishing thing. So really, as you say, you come out at the end of a lesson glowing, or at the end of the day, you're physically tired, but I found your soul, in a sense, is uplifted. And that's what is the most, I think, is why Steiner teaching can be refreshing, not draining. It's physically tiring, but inwardly it's refreshing. And I think that's the sad thing about other forms of education, where the intellect, in a sense, is wonderful and stimulating, but ultimately it's draining. Whereas if we work with our feelings and our will, it is regenerating and refreshing. And that's what, it's almost like every day you can come home tired, but emotionally refreshed. And that's what I've found to be was the great thing with teaching.
One of our former colleagues, Eric Fairmont, published his diaries every year, and he called these diaries a journey of discovery. There's 8 volumes from class 1 to class 8, and they're a good resource for teachers. But this is it. As a teacher, you discover the whole thing, not only about children, that's a given. You discover, you're surprised every day what children bring to you. But the things you have to learn where you thought, well, I don't know, I've never played recorder, I've never painted, I don't know about Greek history. And you put your whole heart and head in, and you discover Greek history all of a sudden and become enthusiastic about it. Yeah.
And Wolfgang, those things aren't just like random, they're all part of an education. I found that someone describes Steiner education as a classical education made modern. And so, for example, I grew up without knowing anything about ancient Greece, and yet it's profoundly important in understanding the modern world, who we are. And I found, being a class teacher, going through that journey, it was actually it was an education for me as much as it was for the students. And I really look back on the things I learned there as some of those important things that I really hold in my own life today.
Thank you to both of you. It's time to move on. And so the next question is, how do you actually become a Steiner teacher? What is the course? And currently, well, there's short courses and intensives all about, but the real thing is the Advanced Diploma. We're the only one left in the Southern Hemisphere, and that's taught at the Melbourne Rudolf Steiner Seminar here in Warranwood, in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. And with that, I'm handing over to Tanya, who tells us about the course, the ins and outs, and the structure and the content and so forth. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you, Wolfgang, and everybody, and welcome to you all. It's lovely to spend some part of the evening with you. Yes, so how do you become a Waldorf teacher? Andrew, Wolfgang, and Sinead have spoken of all these different facets that belong to being a Steiner teacher. And of course, you can't acquire those skills all overnight, those attitudes overnight. Understanding why you do the things you do, you can't acquire overnight. Getting to know the curriculum and then thinking about how you might be able to bring the curriculum alive and how you can integrate other skills and arts into it to bring even more life to it. That is the part of the Steiner teacher. And as Andrew said, it is a healing education. That is a very essential part of this education system. And we all need it, and the children of today need it as much as they needed it in 1919. And what does it take to become a healing educator? A teacher needs to know who they are. A teacher needs to have, one teacher called it a commanding presence, but needs to be very secure in who they are and be their authentic self and be allowed to be their authentic self. And they need to have acquired some knowledge, and they need to know their thoughts, their feelings, and they need to have acquired some skills. Not everything you have to be brilliant at. I will go to that in a moment when we talk a little bit about some of the subjects. All of these things matter enormously, but mostly it matters who you are. So this self-development is a huge aspect of education, because As counselors, we know this, but also as teachers, we know this. 80% of your success is through who you are. You need to be able to engage the children. How do you engage them? Through who you are. So I also have prepared, actually, I didn't prepare, Carmen prepared a slideshow for us, and it is a mini slideshow. We have a much more extensive one. And it is on the website, and I'm sure Carmen will refer you to it later on. So our course is called the Advanced Diploma of Rudolf Steiner Education. And you can ask, who is this course for? Our course is an undergrad course. It is an advanced diploma, and we are lucky, and we have worked hard, that we have managed to have direct entrances into some of the universities. So we have 3 universities who we work with closely: Swinburne, Deakin, and the Catholic University, Australian Catholic University. But you can also take our course credits to any university and see what credits they will give you. So it is a pathway to a Bachelor of Education, a Bachelor of Teaching. Great for if you have chosen teaching as your career. It's also for teachers who are already teachers and would like to really gain a deep knowledge of Steiner education, who really want to understand what it is about. It is also for people who want to make a difference in the world. Many people, or quite a few of our students have also taken this course and then become therapists and in other professions, and have used the knowledge that they have gained in their various professions. Most of them, though, go into the teaching profession. And of course, it is a very meaningful and inspiring new way of thinking about the world, new way of understanding the world. And so that attracts many on their journey to become a teacher. And it does take 2 years. We divide the 2 years into, you can say, 4 semesters or 8 terms. And we offer this course now online and on campus. So our on-campus students come to the seminar for roughly 8 weeks per term for the 8 terms. And they spend 3 days with us from 9 to 4, and that's on Tuesdays to Thursdays. And we go on 3 days of adventuring through all the different subjects, a lot of anthroposophical insights, and why did Steiner think about delivering aspects of the curriculum in the way he suggested, and then it was developed on by the teachers. The online classes are also delivered over 3 days, also in those terms, and they run from Mondays to Wednesdays, and they are shorter days because our online students do come to the seminar 3 times during the 2 years, twice for 8 days, and they are really long days, and once for 10 days. And there we do all the other things that they can't do in the afternoons that we do with our on-campus students. So both groups, both versions have the same hours and have the same content, but it is, of course, delivered slightly differently. And both versions give you the same credit points into the Bachelor of Education or Teaching, and both versions have the same support by the government and all of those things. So how do we structure our 2 years? In the first 2 terms, so that first semester, we spend a lot of time looking at the whys and who we are, understanding the human being and understanding some of the crucial aspects that Rudolf Steiner spoke about, particularly for teachers. So our anthroposophical studies, anthroposophy means the study of the human being. So our anthroposophical studies are all directed to what teachers need. And we work with that particularly in the first 6 months or the first 2 terms. But of course, we don't leave it behind totally after that. It is then, that knowledge is then woven all the time into when we go into curriculum studies. So in those, some of the topics that we cover as a foundation to be able to become a Steiner educator are really thinking about what are the real tasks of education, who do we need to be as educators, understanding Rudolf Steiner's picture of human psychology is a fascinating journey, understanding child development, understanding how child development, of course, doesn't stop when we are children, but our development goes on for the rest of our lives. And how does that look? Personality types are an interesting study. The study of the senses, and in particular, understanding each sense is one thing, but another thing, and the most important thing for us as teachers, is, of course, how do we apply support for those senses so that sensory integration is all the time thought about by the teachers, not only by a specific therapist. Goethean observation is a particular way of coming to know something. And I think it underlies much of what Wolfgang spoke about before, this experiential learning and then coming to a concept almost yourself because you've had these experiences. A very brief expression of that. Inner development, Rudolf Steiner gave many ideas of how we could work on ourselves and develop ourselves, and we explore these. Art history I have put here, although it is also a curriculum topic in some ways, but it also is very interesting to look at, well, how did history develop over the centuries, over the thousands of years? How did it develop, and what does that say about human development? And Rudolf Steiner has a specific way of looking at that, and that is something we investigate. Then, after the first semester, in term 3 of the first year, we begin our curriculum studies in earnest. We actually begin in kindergarten. We talk about early childhood in term 2 as a preliminary preparation. But then from term 3 onwards, we go into the curriculum studies. And the curriculum studies, as you all already outlined, are vast. And there are many subjects. There are academic subjects, there are art subjects, there are professional subjects that we need to cover. And so in term 3, everything is about class 1, the class 1 child, and then after 4 weeks, the class 2 child. And so we focus all the curriculum on class 1 child literacy, mathematics, science, geography, history, when they become relevant, physical education, how do we weave here in Australia Indigenous studies into the entire curriculum? How do we bring music and drama and all the arts? And then in term 4, we focus all on class 3 in term, and so on. We keep on going through the years until we have reached class 8. So we teach from class 1 to class 8 a comprehensive understanding of why you would teach things the way you are teaching them, how you would teach them, what you would teach. We go through them topic by topic. And of course, a lot of that knowledge interweaves. We work with the arts. And we don't work with the arts almost never separately. The arts are integrated into the main learnings at the time. So if you were to, for instance, these little examples here are from a class 5 study, because in class 5, the children learn about ancient India. And so in the sculpture sessions, we then enhance what we've learned about ancient India through sculptural explorations. We have also at times made beautiful elephants, and they all go, they are dressed up and they can have beads on them, because ancient India is very colorful and very dynamic, and all the elephants go to Diwali. So you can bring in culture, you can bring in the arts, you can really combine the knowledge. Here's another, apart from sculpture, which is my hobby horse, but painting, drawing, form drawing. Sculpture includes modeling and stonework and woodwork. The handcrafts are a fantastic topic. And when you think about the connection of the hands to brain development, it's an enormous field which we can work with. The poetic arts, speech, drama, music, movement. And of course, we bring a lot of the arts through the social aspect of celebrating the festivals throughout a rhythmical year. Then there are further considerations. It is not only about the curriculum and not only about understanding why. We also need to look at programs and assessment. We need to look at classroom management. We need to look at inclusive teaching. We also take on, I spoke before about Goethean observation. That Goethean observation can become about learning about anything. We can observe a plant and learn about it. We can observe an animal and learn about it. But we can also observe human beings and learn about each other. And as a teacher, we can use a very careful method of observation to focus on the children in our class. We call it a child study, and it is often usually done on an individual child, but it can be applied in other ways as well, and is a very deep way of having, well, it's a meditative aspect that works on the child, but of course it also allows us to see the child hopefully in a new way, in a very present, in the moment way, rather than, we form our impressions very quickly. And a Goethean observation is trying to open us up again to see new. And the teacher's inner development, of course. We also have 3 practical placements in Steiner schools. Our students all go on these practical placements. They spend 40 days in total in a variety of Steiner schools. We usually recommend that they go to different schools and that they go to different year levels. And our students return full of inspiration and full of fire when they return. It is wonderful to hear their reports and what they have learned by being in the classrooms. I don't think there's anything on this slide that is in addition to this. So many of our students say that our course is life-changing. Many of our students find that they have gained a very solid foundation for their teaching abilities. They've had a lot of practice because apart from the practical placements, almost all of our teaching sessions are very engaging and very, we do a lot of role plays where people learn to teach to each other, and the students say how incredibly helpful that is and helps them go out into the classrooms and practice there before they become teachers. So they have plenty of opportunities to develop teaching skills and to become confident before they go out there. Also, at the moment, as all educational systems, they are crying out for teachers. Also, Steiner schools, Waldorf schools are crying out for teachers worldwide, by the way. I think I've spoken for quite a long time, and I wonder if I should wrap it up there, but please feel free to go on our website and look for the long version of this slideshow and our course. And it also shows you the campus, and I think it's quite an inspiring invitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Very comprehensive overview there. So I might just put on a little slideshow, just showing you activities and the ground, because the on-campus course is just stunning in terms of where it is and how it all happens. And instead of me talking about it, what you see, maybe Sinead can just add a few of the highlights of her time at the seminar.
Yeah, you asked me to have a think about what I enjoyed the most about the course. And I think for me, I really loved primary school and high school. And I really missed school when I finished. And it felt like being able to go back to school. And in that, I gained a community. I made lifelong friendships. I got to experience all these artistic endeavors again. But also for me, I had so many questions answered about what it is to be a Steiner teacher. That was my image of being a teacher, was a Steiner teacher. And so in my mainstream teacher training, I felt really lost because I wasn't learning how to be what I had seen growing up. And so to have all my questions answered in the 2 years that I was there was incredibly inspiring. And if you ever decide to offer a master's course, I'll be there with bells on.
And Sinead, do you think the course has prepared you for your current work life as a teacher?
Definitely. I mean, Tanya's just gone over it. It's so extensive what you cover. And at times you wonder, how could this possibly be related? We're talking about, you know, the development of the universe and epochs of time, but we just cover so much, and all of it relates back down to the children and their development. And yeah, it's just a journey through history and time and the world, and it's incredible. It really does prepare you to be a teacher.
And it takes the fear away, because, you know, students might say, oh, I've never played any music. Well, very gently we learn how to play a recorder, or I've never done any stitching or craft in my life, or the previous any paint. I'm not good at painting. Well,
you forget too that children will think you're amazing at everything. No matter what you're doing, children will think you're amazing at it. So upper hand there too.
and the other thing is, as a teacher, you never stop learning. Apparently, the children learn most from a teacher who is actually learning. A teacher who knows everything is not such a good teacher. By the way, this is Tom and doing some blacksmithing and some metal work. A lot of the work at the online course happens outdoors. We have a couple of outdoor classrooms. Of course, we have proper classrooms inside as well. Well, there's some of the copper work, which might fit into the Class 4 curriculum, for instance. And of course, there's this huge social aspect at the seminar. Communal breakfast at the moment. It's every morning that starts with a song and a blessing. And that's what you do later on with the children in the classroom. Community is really, really big. That you're sort of relating to everyone and you hold the whole community. Well, there we are. I'd like to, on my behalf, thank everyone for coming tonight. I might see you later for questions and answers. But I'm handing back to Carmen to wrap it all up. Thank you, everyone.
Yes. So thank you, everyone, Wolfgang, Sinead, Tanya, and Andrew. So I'd just like to remind everyone that on our website, there's a lot of information, including the full video presentation of the program. And you can also download our course guide. You can't really see it. But on our website, you can download that course guide, so which give you a lot of details about the program. And there are also a lot of video about our graduates who completed the program and what they think about it, and sometimes where they are now as well. One of the best ways to experience Steiner education is go to their school fairs and open days. And this month and the next month is actually when they're all happening around Australia or even in the world. So if you have any questions about the course or about Steiner education, please email Robin and myself. Robin cannot be here tonight, but our email is office@steinerseminar.edu.au, or our phone number is 03 in Victoria, 9876 5199. So we hope tonight has been engaging and useful, and thank you very much, everyone, for your time.
And please stay back if you have some specific questions. There was no specific questions on the chat screen.
No, not really.
Also, may I point out, there is trial days. You can book yourself in and come and try us out for a day.
Yes, actually the next one is the 22nd, next Tuesday. So if you're interested, it will be sometime in the morning. So go to our website and you can just sign up there.
There was one question about a deadline of enrollment. Yes, there is a deadline, because we never know whether we have enough students to run the next year, unfortunately. We had times where there were waiting lists, but with cost of living and all the rest of it. And so there's a whole lot of reasons that might just event in the sad thing we haven't got a second year. So the quicker we know that you want to come, please let us know. Put in your expression of interest. Of course, we'd like to have 50 of you, but there's a minimum number for us. And if that number is not reached, then we can't teach you. That's the sad reality. Any other questions? Do you offer short courses? Yeah, there are short courses. And the best thing I can say, refer to the seminar webpage where all the short courses are listed. They can be all in all fields, can be about teaching, can be about art, can be about art therapy and so forth. Refer to our webpage. You will find the short courses listed there. Any other questions? Well, we can't offer student visas, but in the past we had many students from overseas, even from Argentina, we had from Brazil, from Germany, from Vietnam, from Malaysia. So we are internationally registered. So we are allowed to have up to 25 international students. And we, of course, we support their visa applications. But the visa is received through the Department of Immigration. And as you might have witnessed in the last few years, the government has lowered the student numbers that can enroll into tertiary courses, which is a very sad reality. The answer is yes, we are allowed to have international students and we support their visa process. Whether the government comes and helps you with that, that's unfortunately another story. Sorry, I'm a maths teacher and changing to Steiner teaching in the new school year at Mount Barker Waldorf School. So look into your short courses. Thanks for your time. Well, good luck with that. Can you mention the email and phone number again, please?
There's a question that asks, are there any different routes to becoming a Steiner teacher if you already have Bachelor of Education and a full-time teacher with the department?
Well, there are short courses and short teacher training, but it doesn't give you the package. Mind you, there is such a notorious shortage of Steiner teachers that schools will take just about anyone and they give you sort of on-the-job training with intensives. The Steiner Association offers an intensive every January, which is a crash course of a week that attracts not only newcomers, it attracts teachers on the job. Someone who is going from class 3 into class 4 might go there and learn about class 4, but it also caters for all those who can't afford 2-year full-time training, and yet they want to be Steiner teachers. There's a world of a difference, though, between someone who gets the works, so to say, and someone who is doing intensives. Any other questions? The email and the phone number has just gone into the chat box. You can grab it from there, please. Otherwise, just Google Steiner Seminar, contact us.
There are 2 more new questions. Can you talk a bit about tuition and financial aid, if any? I think the best thing is to go to our website to have a look. Our website has all of the information for international students and local students who the government offers that student loan. And there's information over there. And if you have further questions after that, you can always email to the email address that I just sent to everyone. And
for those who are not familiar with that, VET students loan is exactly the same as HEX, but the Steiner Seminar is actually part of the TAFE system, so to say. We are registered RTO, and our students are entitled to get a student loan. In our case, it's called VET student loan and not HEX as it is in tertiary education. That's the only financial aid. In some years, we're giving scholarships. It depends how we go financially. Next question is an interesting one. Do Steiner teachers have to go through the whole from K to 8, or can they focus on 1 year? That really depends on the school. I have to say early childhood is usually separate. Kindergarten and prep, they stay there and stay kindergarten and prep teacher, although some prep teachers then travel through with the class. But Well, if you are in a school that has a primary school only, you might just go up to class 6 and then go back to class 1. There's not that many schools that have actually facility where a teacher can go from class 1 to class 8. Mind you, it's the most incredible journey. I would encourage people. But there's other schools that have so-called syndicates where teachers stay in the class 1 to 3 area, others in the 4, 5, and 6, and they cycle. But you will stay a few years with one class because you develop this social network. You develop a rapport with your parents and so forth. So 3 years, I'd say, is the minimum. And if you can do the 8 years, I can only recommend it. But some people are just born early childhood teachers. And, well, that's what they do. Of course, there's secondary teachers, and they stay with their subject. And they will teach from, I don't know, from class 7 to class 12. They don't have their own sort of home group, so to say. But the class teachers stay with their children.
Did Tanya have something to add?
No, I only wanted to point out that there are specialist teachers, and yes.
I think we might leave it there.
Yeah.
Once more, everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And of course, my hope is that you all become Steiner teachers. We need you. The children need you. They're waiting for you. There's just not enough. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.